gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 421. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by Viable Human Chris Saturn.
Hi, Justin.
Hi, Viable Human Chris Saturn.
So weird.
My hand gestures when I intro the show have gotten so elaborate that I'm embarrassed for the day that we inevitably one time record in person, and you go, why are you karate chopping?
Now you're composing.
That's
you're conducting, rather. You're conducting the show.
We have quite a bit of housekeeping to get through. Which is that life's still hectic for Saturn. So that's still a thing that's going on because of the imminent removal of your job from the Earth.
And not just that, we've also suddenly realized that there is a higher priority in cleaning out my parents' house because the ceiling in one of the bedrooms has almost completely collapsed now.
Oh, no.
And there's a bunch of what looks like really severe mold in there.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, because they used to have a leak in the roof, but they got the roof replaced, but they never replaced the ceilings. So in this one bedroom, no one had been in for years because it was the hoarder bedroom they just shoved things into. And so I've been going over there with my siblings and trying to get everything out of that room as much as possible.
Hope you're wearing a respirator.
Yep. Yeah, we got some respirators and some basically clean room attire. Yeah. And also we are finding all kinds of things, toys from our childhood, furniture from my dad's childhood from the 1950s. We found all of my dad's pay stubs from like 1981 through 97 or something like that.
That was kind of cool.
It's weird. Why would he have kept those?
I could just imagine him coming home every fucking day and setting it down in the same spot for like 25 years.
Well, they were in a little tiny Rolodex.
Okay.
From the 70s. And it was weird. Like we were looking through, like, why would he have kept all these? And my brother says, well, what if he got audited or whatever? And then my sister jumps in with, he hasn't paid his taxes in 12 years. So clearly it wasn't for that.
Right.
So it's been a thing. We're dealing with all of that on top of me also having to clean out an office and dealing with movers, and they're finally coming to get all the furniture. So it's really weird at my office right now because it's just an enormous empty building.
This is also the recording block where, because of how we record, my vacation catches up to the show.
Yeah.
So I've been back for a week, but this is the recording block in which me being gone for that week was when I was supposed to be doing research for these shows. So 421 and 422. So that's
because you went on vacation right after we recorded last.
Yeah,
time.
I recorded, and then like day after or 2 days later, I was on a plane.
Yeah.
Also, I do want to say this, and thankfully people reached out in the Discord and were like, hey, you haven't read my Patreon name ever. And I was like, well, that's not right.
Right.
And I was like, well, we have 165 patrons. We read 10 per show. It'll take like 16 and a half shows for your name to come back up. Has it been that long?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, yeah, it has. And I look into it, and it turns out I don't know how to operate Excel.
I believe you.
And my wife very kindly put together this spreadsheet where we can fill out the names. And she had, all right, I'm just going to say it. She had a thing at the top that had a number, and it said next to it, if this number is not 0, tell Courtney to fix it. And I'd been ignoring it, and it was negative 67. Which is, as you know, a decent distance from 0.
Correct.
And in my head, I'm like, well, that's not going to remove patron names from the selection list. Oh, but it does.
It was a negative number, Justin.
About 77 patrons were not in our rotation. So to anybody who has joined and has not heard your name read, first of all, we have fixed it. Second of all, we apologize. And you will hopefully start hearing some new names.
And if your name was one of the ones that was missed, reach out to us and we can kind of bump you up the list to make sure that you are.
Yeah. If you're like, hey man, that sucks, but I really want you to read my name, get on Discord and PM me your email address that you're signed up for, and I'll put you at the top of the list, which we've got some of those at the end of this show because people are like, hey, can I get at the top of the list? Yeah. You can.
Right.
I do also recognize that opens the door for people knowing when their name is going to be read and being able to change their name strategically to fit that situation. But there's nothing I can do about that.
Only so much we can do about that. And while you're in the Discord, you can find out what topics we're going to be recording
Yes,
soon.
you can.
So you could even make a topical name for your relevant Discord name.
And you're like 200 character limit or whatever that
Yeah.
is. Actually, it's not even nearly that long, I don't think.
Right.
So to the people that had their names read repeatedly because they were in the mix, you're welcome.
Yeah, congratulations.
It did start to seem like we were hearing a lot of names a lot.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm like, well, we're just a small show. We have a smaller Patreon. We don't, we're going to hear the names are going to be familiar.
Yeah, we record a lot, whatever.
No. Yeah, no, it's yeah. Anyway, so to anyone that's upset, again, please reach out if it's upsetting to you or whatever, or,
Right.
just, it was a total fuck up and nobody noticed for presumably a long time.
And I don't look at the spreadsheet, so I had no idea. I use Excel a lot at work, so I could help you with these things.
Courtney made the part that says, if this is not zero, tell Courtney gargantuan on the screen and bright red. Because she was like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, I don't know. I felt bad like every couple of weeks being like, hey, will you fix my spreadsheet? So I was just kind of ignoring it. I didn't think it was going to do that. And she was like, no, just ask me. So that's what has happened. Anyway, that's all our housekeeping. My week, I do want to deliver kind of final thoughts on the Miyuu Mini Plus.
Okay.
Because I did play through tonight's topic and next episode's topic on the Miyuu Mini Plus.
Nice.
And I know I kind of sung its praises previously, and that got some people in the Discord talking about Miyuus and being like, hey, should I get this? Or the Ambernic, the RG35XX, or whatever their equivalent device is. In discussion about comparisons between Garlic OS and Onion OS and all this different stuff.
Right.
So having put in, I don't know how many hours.
Probably a couple dozen at least.
At least a couple dozen, possibly more,
Mhm.
on my Miyuu Mini Plus. It still remains a fantastic device.
Nice.
I highly, highly recommend it to anyone looking for a handheld, especially if you want a handheld that has the robust features of an aftermarket operating system that you can install, but you're not like technically inclined enough to install like Raspberry Pi OS, because installing Onion OS on this thing is super easy.
Nice.
You download a zip file, you unzip it onto the SD card, and you plug the SD card in, and it automatically installs everything.
Nice.
And so that's the entire process. You do have to check your firmware version, and you might need to do a firmware update if you're on an older firmware, but that's literally just download this file, put it on the SD card, and it installs itself too. So if you're okay with like putting files on an SD card, and if you're doing emulation, you should be. That's kind of a skill that I would say is just relatively necessary for emulation.
Yeah.
Then you'll be good. You don't need to know any Linux terminology or any of this shit. You just unzip a couple folders and it's just bing, bang, boom, here it is. Now you can, and it puts your ROM folders on there so you know where to drop all your stuff.
Now, you will need to know how to unzip things. I've learned that is a thing that not everybody knows these days.
I see. If you don't know how to unzip things, then, good luck.
Yeah.
If dragging files and unzipping folders is too much for you, then buy a Nintendo Switch. I think that's the tech level that you might need to be at. Then, although it still takes SD cards and they are necessary because they have no internal storage. Well, they have a negligible amount.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what to tell you. I don't really know what to tell you. Anyway, no, I do really highly recommend it. My Miyuu Mini Plus went with me on vacation.
Yeah.
And I took it over my regular Mini because I've been, again, swapping back and forth between the Mini Plus and the Mini because I have it set so like if I'm playing a game and I hit the power button, it saves my game and turns it off. And then when I turn it back on, it boots right back into the game.
Right.
And even that save state keeps when I switch it between devices. So I can switch it to my little Mini and it just keeps right on trucking. It does also, I've noticed, extrapolate a lot of kind of fiddly RetroArch stuff out to hotkeys so that you, unless you're a crazy person like me or you're using cheats, because cheats you do kind of have to manipulate some RetroArch menus, you really don't ever have to open RetroArch.
Nice.
Fast forward is already mapped automatically. Save and load are automatically mapped. You can change aspect ratio or pop up an FPS counter, all automatically mapped to hotkeys. And it's in the guide that it shows you when you boot up Onion for the first time. It's like, hey, here's all the hotkeys that you can use.
Don't all those have hotkeys in RetroArch already?
I think they do, but depending on the device, they're not always necessarily mapped, especially stuff like fast forward and FPS counter, which I feel should be. An FPS counter in particular, I know it sounds like something that only crazies and obsessives would get invested in.
Yes.
But sometimes you're playing a game and it's being emulated and you're like, is this running like shit? Because I can't tell. It does occasionally happen where you're playing like a early 3D PS1 game and you're like, does this run like shit or is this just what Croc is like? Because I can't actually. So being able to open an FPS counter and see that, oh yeah, my FPS is dipping way low is good.
But some PS1 games just run at 15 FPS though.
This is true. But it's a place to get the data. I do use FPS counters a lot, especially on stuff that is prone to weird slowdown. Like I played like 20 minutes of a GBA game, and I was like, is this running shitty? And I finally hit, it's like a home button X or something, and I popped up my FPS, and sure enough, it was running at like 40 instead of 60. And I was like, oh, it is. So then I could go fix it, right? But yeah, highly recommend it as a really good entry point to people wanting to get into these handhelds and looking for something simple and available and ergonomically nice. I've put in enough time on the Mini Plus now that I'm comfortable saying the ergonomics are pretty darn good, and I've got big hands, and the shoulder buttons on it are very usable.
That's good.
So I've been really enjoying the device. I've been having a really good time with it. Everything, and of course, as I tend to do, I got weird and obsessive with it, and I've got mine's fully customized. I've flashed custom boot images. I've got custom themes. I've remapped all the hotkeys and shit. I've redone integer scaling and stuff, and one thing I do love is they put scaling on a hotkey automatically too. So if you push home button start, it flips you through the different scaling modes like integer scaling, stretch mode, whatever. And I like that a lot because sometimes depending on the game and the system, like if I'm playing on my little Mii, I'll just stretch the game. It's going to make it a little bit out of whack, but it's not stretched too much. And the screen is so tiny, I kind of just need the real estate. Mm-hmm. So I do filter through different scaling modes, and it remembers them. And so it's just really nice. I spend minimal amounts of time in RetroArch on it, which is kind of rare for me because now that I've become accustomed to RetroArch, if something's running RetroArch, I'll just open RetroArch and do everything in there because that's what I'm used to it. Yeah. You know. But yeah, highly recommend it. As far as I know, still widely available on Amazon, at least in the U.S.
As of the time of recording,
they don't seem to be having any stock issues of it yet, which is really nice. Yeah. And they seem to be improving stock of the original Mii Mini, because I'm on there. There's a service called Telegram, and I'm on the official Mii Mini like notification thread, and so I get like production updates. So this is the cool thing about following Chinese knockoff handheld companies is you can just message them and ask them; they'll just answer you. Yeah, it's not always going to make sense, but you can just be like, "Hey, are y'all going to make new colors of this?" And they'll be like, "August could happen," and you're like, "August could happen, man. That how whatever." And so I see production updates, and they've claimed that they've solved the screen sourcing issue for the regular minis, so there should be more of those floating around. Just a really, really good device, a good mixture of plenty of like power user options for people like me on the back end, but also just really simple. My daughter has one, and she uses it successfully. She's been playing Dragon Quest 1 on it, and she has been enjoying it.
I would like to, because I know that you are sometimes prone to existential crises. I would just like to alleviate your fears and let you know that August did happen.
It did? Oh,
yes, we're in it right now. We didn't skip it this year. It's okay.
Concerned. You can just message them and be like, "Hey, when is this color coming back in stock?" And you'll get like a poorly translated response of when you can expect it in stock. It's just really weird coming from the world of like American electronics corporations to be able to just message a factory and be like, "Hey, y'all gonna make purple ones?" And they're like, "Yes, can happen." And you're like, "All right, good." All that said, I've also been using my hacked 3DS. I have been playing Dragon Quest Monsters 3D Terry's Wonderland. Is that the whole title?
I think so.
It's
It's just a remake of Dragon Quest Monsters 1.
Yes, because I finished this week's game and I was like, I'm still feeling more Dragon Quest, but I don't really want to jump right into another Dragon Quest because they're a little samey and I don't want to burn out.
Right.
And so I wanted something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And I made
Monsters is a little bit different.
It is a little bit different. I made the mistake of booting up the sequel, not realizing it was the sequel, and got like 40 minutes into that, and then was like, "Oh, this is the sequel, not the first one," because I didn't see the 2 in the title, I guess. And then I go back to the first one, and the first one is just a much simpler game.
Is there a translation of the sequel on 3DS?
Yeah, I was playing it. It was in English. So get on the H Shop. Can I just complain about something? I know that we're already off on tangents. We barely started the show. I was trying to find, because English patching in 3DS ROM is a fucking ordeal. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to find a copy of the ROM that worked, because the one on H Shop did not work for me. And so I go join the 3DS hacking Discord. And they're like, yeah, don't talk about H-Shop or ROMs or illegal downloading or any of that. And I'm like, all right. I go to the 3DS piracy subreddit, and even they're being... I'm just annoyed. Like, we're on the internet. You can just be like, yeah, I pirated this game. You can do that. It's, to anyone out there listening, I pirated Terry's Wonderland. It never came out in my language. Getting a copy is difficult. And I stole it.
I say it's difficult. It's $17 on Amazon right now.
For a Japanese one.
Yeah.
I don't speak Japanese, Saturn.
But you can apply a translation.
Have you ever English patched a 3DS ROM?
Yes, because that's how I played it on my 3DS.
It fucking sucks. Also, let me tell you, taking apart a dumped ROM and applying an English patch, if we want to talk about things that are legally questionable, also legally questionable.
Yep.
If we just want to go down this road. So I just get annoyed that people on the internet are like, okay, we all know that H-Shop exists. We all know that we're pirating these games, but no one can say it. I'm like,
I think it's a covering your ass thing, especially with something like Reddit, because they have been known to crack down on subreddits that openly talk about piracy because the rights holders will come after them.
I mean, look, it's not like we're talking about pirating Street Fighter 6, which you can do.
Right.
These are old games that you can't even buy them new anymore. I know. It just annoys. You can't even buy it new anymore.
Right.
Square Enix cannot receive my money for Terry's Wonderland, no matter what avenue I take.
Yeah.
And it's never been in my language, and I cannot figure out how to fucking patch it because it sucks.
Well, it has been in your language on Game Boy Color.
Yeah, and that version of the game sucks, Saturn. I want to play the good one.
I love that version of the game.
Anyway, I've been playing Terry's Wonderland. It's fun. It's really simple, but it's kind of a good time killer.
Well, it's very much a remake of a Game Boy Color game.
Yeah. And so I've been enjoying that a good bit. What have you been doing, Saturn?
God, barely anything. Just desperately trying to get home to sleep some nights. I was tinkering around with Rare Replay on my Xbox.
Yeah.
And it's still just a really great collection of games that I don't care about.
You know, I was just going to say that exact same thing. What an awesome collection of games that, like, I don't care about 85% of them.
However, I will say that whoever made the achievement list for it is a masochist. Because there's like 400 some odd achievements, I think. At least 380 something. But there's a shitload. There's a shitload of achievements in the game. And they're almost all for ridiculously difficult things. And most of them are for getting everything in every game. There's a lot of games, and a lot of those games are very long.
And some of them are hardcore collectathons.
Yes. And some of the others are hard Nintendo games.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the masochists at Rare can fuck off. But the collection itself is still neat. And I do appreciate the behind the scenes stuff and the interviews. I always like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I've just had so little time to play anything this week that I was just like, I need something that takes like minutes and has no chance of like getting me invested.
And you've already finished Vampire Survivors, so
right, I have. Or I would have played that instead.
Yep.
Instead, most of my week has been spent at work, where we've had the movers there, and they're getting all the furniture out, and they have to have somebody there to supervise them. And they also have the packing and shipping people that showed up that are packing up all of our stuff and sending it to our other sites and everything. And they also need supervised, and no one else wants to show up.
Yeah.
And there's only 8 of us, and my boss already transferred away. He doesn't work for us anymore. He works for a different division of the company. So it's just me that's been showing up there. Me and the guy who was kind of filling in as manager. He will show up most
Unsupervised
days.
Saturn.
Yeah, I haven't been supervised in years up there just because nobody has been up there for the pandemic.
Yeah.
And now nobody's up there because we're closing down. It's just been me and sometimes the manager showing up. And like when he gets there, he's like, "Why did you dress up? You should be in a t-shirt or something." And then he like eats his lunch and he goes home. And I'm like, "You sure you don't need to watch these guys?" And he's like, "You got it."
Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah, nobody seems to care anymore, which just makes sense. We've all been fired. But yeah, it's just been awkward and strange and time consuming.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's do the news.
okay.
Microsoft announced a pizza-scented Xbox controller, and I'm
Gross.
pissed off about this.
Why?
Because first of all, because I hate pizza, Saturn.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not actually a pizza-scented controller. It is a cool-looking Ninja Turtles controller that has like a pizza attachment that you plug into its butt that you can drip some like pizza-scented essential oil onto that they give you.
That's double gross.
And I'm annoyed because they're cool Ninja Turtles controllers, but I don't need the big chonkin plastic piece of pizza that slides into the butt of it. Like, just give me a cool Ninja Turtles controller. I don't need the gimmick. I'm excited about a TMNT controller. Like, that's what I'm excited about.
Do you remember well, you probably don't remember it from when it happened, but
Yeah.
Have you seen the Earthbound Scratch and Sniff air freshener?
I've not seen the air freshener, no. I know about the stickers.
Yeah, when you there was some kind of contest in either the Player's Guide or Nintendo Power or something. Oh, it was in the Player's Guide. It was because they had the Scratch and Sniff cards, and one of them was mystery smell. And if you could identify it, which it was pizza, and you sent it your answer on a postcard or whatever to Nintendo, they would send you back this Earthbound air freshener. And it's just a little shitty air freshener, and it smells like ass. But last I checked, they were selling for like $1 jillion on eBay.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So this is another pizza scented game thing. So do you think this too will eventually sell for $1 gajillion?
Well, what I'm more fascinated by is the fact that this means Microsoft is producing little vials of pizza scent and putting them out in the world. And I'm like, if you had told me in like 2001 that like, oh, Microsoft, the company that produced little vials of pizza scent in 2023, I'd be like, what what? No, why would they do that?
Watching the promo videos for the original Xbox, I think I'd have believed it.
What I do like is that someone out there is going to fucking be in love with this scent, and they're going to be going on eBay and buying up all the little vials of pizza scent because they're going to be like, I need this in my life. I just love this. This is my scent, you know?
They're going to wear it when they go outside. I assume that they will also be the same person that wants the air freshener from Earthbound because it also smelled like ass pizza.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. ESRB proposes facial age estimation technology for parental consent.
That's the worst phrase I've heard in years.
That is some straight up dystopian shit. Like,
right?
Aldous Huxley could not have come up with a more dystopian fucking sounding thing.
So I can't imagine that, one, it gets implemented, and two, it is legal in any way, because there are people who are full-grown adults who look like children, and there are people who are children who look like full-grown adults.
Well,
and
but also
the AI is already stupid enough without having to guess what age you are. I can't imagine how much stupider it would be when it's trying to protect restricted content.
Well, but also, we live in a fucking society, and you don't need facial recognition software put out by ESRB to determine who is playing. Like, we can just trust that we're all going to, follow the rules. And if we don't follow the rules about who gets to play what software, you know what? Who fucking cares?
Right.
Who fucking cares? Fuck off with stupid shit.
it is their parents' responsibility to be watching after them and making sure that they are not playing Hentai versus Evil or whatever. It should
is that out? It came out?
That's been out for a long time.
Hentai versus Evil? I don't even know what that is.
It's on Switch and Steam.
Oh, God.
It's awful.
I assumed you were making something up.
Nope.
So it's like, can we stop offsetting all of society to scanning and recognition software?
Seriously.
Like, please. This is like it's like you read William Gibson novels as aspirational material for the future. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah,
Did you not watch any 80s movies?
Right.
This is exactly what we were scared of.
I'm increasingly believing that everyone who runs tech companies saw movies like Terminator and Blade Runner and were like, oh, that is a good idea.
This is an awesome idea. Look how great this future is. Look, Coca-Cola still has a sign in Blade Runner. They're still making billions. We love this. Fuck off.
I can't wait for Judgment Day.
Yeah, it looks rough, but the guy that's the skeleton on the playground, that's not going to be us.
That scared the fuck out of me in first grade.
Oh, me too. I mean, I wasn't in first grade. I was younger than first grade. Actually, I probably watched it later, I guess, because that would have been how it happened.
My mom came and took me out of school to see it in the theater the day it came out. She was like, Terminator 2's out. We have to go.
Dragon Quest II is being ported to Master System, so finally, all you poor, neglected Master System users can play Dragon Quest II. I know you've been very upset. You've been waiting all these years.
It's a weird choice, and it's a weird port. I'm excited to see all these weird ports. I love that idea. But this is... So, one, I don't know if there was a demand for Dragon Quest II on Master System. If there was a demand for any Dragon Quest, why 2? And why Master System, and it's being ported in Japanese. So my question is there a huge Japanese Sega Mark III and Master System fan base that were like, we really wanted just the second Dragon Quest?
Yeah, but we don't need it in English. Just give it to us.
They're in Japan, so that would make sense, I guess.
Right.
But I don't think they exist. I don't think that group of people exists.
Yeah.
But if they do, I'm very happy for them, and I hope they enjoy it.
Speaking of, DuckTales was ported to the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So you could play DuckTales on a Super Nintendo. So all you Super Nintendo people... No, I haven't looked at it. Does it look good?
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I mean, it's still using 8-bit style sprites, but it has better color.
Yeah.
So it just looks like a cleaner version of it. Like it almost looks... not quite as big of a difference, but similar to the difference between NES Mega Man and Wily Wars Mega Man.
Yeah. Microsoft is permanently banning accounts that use emulators downloaded in retail mode. Let me say it again, because I said it back when everyone was all excited that you could, in air quotes, jailbreak your Xbox, which is not what it was.
No.
If you buy a consumer device with the intent of using it in a way that is against the terms of service, expect corporations to come in and bone you.
Yeah.
It's just what they're going to do. It might take them a minute, but they're going to do it. That's what they do.
They have not shown any moves towards any punishment towards the developer
mode. Yeah.
I don't know that they will, but they still could.
They could at any point in time.
There's nothing stopping them.
And even if you're not violating the TOS, you know what they can do? They can just change. They can just change the TOS, because the TOS you signed also says that you'll abide by their next TOS, because that's how terms of service work.
Yeah,
that's
and
how
also,
they get you.
If someone steals your account and does something stupid on your then stolen account, you can lose all of the digital games you purchased.
Yeah.
So maybe just let's not purchase any digital games.
Like, don't get me wrong, I'm always in favor of jailbreaking, hacking, custom firmwares, whatever you want to do. Yeah. But don't expect the corporation to still be happy with you after you do it. You got to be prepared to unplug from them and move on, Right. Star Wars TIE Fighter Total Conversion mod makes the game look modern. I never played the original X-Wing or TIE Fighter.
Yeah.
I was a little young for PC space flight sims when they came out.
What about X-Wing versus TIE Fighter?
I didn't play that one either. Nope. Never have. So I'm kind of excited for this to be me trying it out for the first time. Like, this will be, what I do moving forward. So
I'm not a huge fan of space flight sims, and I'm also not a huge fan of Star Wars, so I never cared for them, but I had many friends who were absolutely obsessed with those games. And seeing the pictures of this mod, it looks really impressive.
Yeah. And finally, Final Fantasy XIV getting an Xbox release. I didn't realize it wasn't on Xbox yet.
Oh yeah, no. They hinted at an Xbox release like 6 years ago. And they said that they would like to get to it when they can find some time. And I am guessing that whatever contract they had with Sony finally expired.
Yeah,
because they have announced the Xbox release. It's going into open beta sometime next spring. And what's funny is Phil Spencer, the Xbox guy, he has very openly been a player of Final Fantasy XIV for a while and trying to tell everybody that it's coming to Xbox any day now. And finally that day is coming. So good for him.
I want to know who the fuck he's playing with. Like, who's on Final Fantasy XIV? Like, oh yeah, that's Phil over there. Yeah, he's our white mage. Like, what?
I assume his screen name in the game is something like Butt Chugger.
Yeah, Butt Chugger 42069 XL. Oh yeah, that's Phil Spencer over there. He's over there like teabagging someone. Yeah,
I just imagine him on Discord, running a raid or whatever, and everybody's like, "Your voice sounds real familiar." Nope, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Shut the fuck up, noobs.
Learn to heal.
Which brings us to our topic.
We missed one.
What did we miss?
Oracles was added to NSO.
Yeah, the Oracles games were added to NSO, so you can play those. They are tedious but fun.
Yeah, you don't even need to pay for the expansion pass.
Oh, that's nice. How nice of them.
Yeah, I know, right? And they're one of our games of the month this month in our game club on our Discord.
They are that and Chrono Trigger. Our theme is time travel this month.
And also free time.
And also free time, which you'll need. You can use the time travel to get yourself more free time.
That's good.
Is what the theme
Man,
is.
I wish.
Which now brings us to our topic at hand, which is Dragon Quest III: The Seeds of Salvation. Meaning that we've done an episode on Dragon Quest 1 and Dragon Quest 3,
right?
But never 2.
That's fine.
I've been waiting for the Master System port. So
you were the one.
First, I got to buy Master System and learn Japanese, but then I'm like ready to go on it.
Right.
Synopsis: Saturn wrote "Questing harder with a vengeance." Dragon Quest III, developed by Chunsoft and published by Enix, was known in Japan as, and I'm going to say this in my best Texan accent, Dragon Quest III So Shite Densetsu E, which
Soshite Densetsu E,
which translates literally to "and so" into the legend.
And I would like to point out that it has an ellipsis right in the title of the game.
Oh, I thought you just put that there.
No.
It's JRPG's always wanting to add those ellipses right there.
Yeah.
Just want to get me with that.
I know how much you love ellipses they enjoy them
so much.
So I had to point out that it was right there in the title.
This came out on NES, which, man, what a robust NES game it was.
Oh, yeah.
Came out February 10th, 1988 in Japan, in North America as Dragon Warrior 3 in January of 1992.
Yep.
Which is 2 months after Final Fantasy IV on SNES.
Yes.
There's a Super Famicom port. This was Japan only, developed by Heartbeat, came out in 96. There is the GBC port that came out in 2000 in Japan, and this is a version we did get in the US, Dragon Warrior 3 in 2001. There have been Android and iOS ports. There are PS4 and 3DS ports. There are Switch ports. It's on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to play this game.
I'd like to point out, because of how old this game is, it came out in 88. Games that we were getting in the West in 88 were things like Mario 2 and Zelda 2. We were still pretty early in the console's life. Mega Man 2 came out in 88. Actually, no, it came out in Japan in 88. It didn't come out over here until the next year. So this was fairly early in the NES's lifespan. Those of us in the West don't always think of it like that because we didn't get it until after there were already Super Nintendo games available.
Yeah.
But this was a relatively early NES game within the first 5 years of the console's life.
Which is insane.
It is robust for how early of a game it is.
I would say that, and this is kind of getting into spoiler territory for like episode 2 of this.
Right.
But it's almost more ambitious than it can even handle itself at times.
Yeah.
In a good way. You can see the ambition there, and having played later JRPGs and other games in the series, you can see this ambition really here, and you really feel like they were kind of held back by some of these limitations.
Right.
As far as scope, this will be a two-parter, which is why it said part 1 in the title. When you clicked it, you should have read it. I know. We haven't done a two-part JRPG episode in a long time.
It's been a bit.
I'm guessing since Final Fantasy VII, maybe? Is that the last one?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'll have to look it up.
And we're going to be talking mostly about the game in broad strokes, about all the different versions, but Saturn played the heck out of the NES version. Saturn, presumably, I presume, played all of the versions.
Yes.
Including
the ones that aren't in English.
I played through the GBC version, which I'll talk about why in a minute. But what that does mean is that I don't know the names of any of this shit. Because,
don't worry, no one else does either.
Because the GBC in particular, they had some limitations.
Yeah, so and every version had a different translation that sometimes was closer to the Japanese version, sometimes it was closer to the NES version. The only two versions of this game that have the same English translation are the mobile and Switch versions.
Yeah.
Mother 3 was our last two-part.
Weird. Oh, yeah, that was a two-parter, wasn't it?
That was,
remember that.
That was in 2021.
So certainly Saturn will be our encyclopedia of different terminology as we go through, but just be aware that if we're saying stuff and you've played this game and you're like, that's not the name of any of that, then sorry.
Yeah.
Blame Square Enix.
Yeah, it's a confusing mess. I'm going to try to be correct in any terminology. I will probably fall back on the NES terminology just because that's the version I've played the most.
Yeah.
But I have played it some enough on GBC and the more recent translation to know some things. So we'll see how bad we fumble that.
And obviously spoilers for this 35-year-old game. Although I will say this, this is not a very robust story in this game. So don't, I mean, really, there's kind of a mid-game twist that a lot of Dragon Quest games seem to like.
Yeah. And this was despite how light on story this game is, certainly light on like mandatory narrative. It's still one of the earliest JRPGs that I played where I was like, oh, that was such an amazing twist, and like it really caught my attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still very light on story.
And it also does that classic Dragon Quest thing of everything being very episodic. Yeah. Encapsulated. So there will be little twists and turns inside the stories of each individual area, but it's just little stuff like, oh, they were betrayed by a jealous lover. Oh, they were kicked out of their home.
In each town.
Yeah. And so this is just me. I don't come to Dragon Quest games for the strength of the vignette storylines. They're just kind of the backdrop for me going from town to town, getting stronger. And obviously I care a little more about the main storyline, but it's pretty light.
But if you do them all in order, then you'll recognize that the guy that stole the crown was also the guy that kidnapped the girl at the pepper shop.
Oh my God! Kandar.
Yep.
Kandar, as I know him.
His name in the new translation is Robin Hood.
Oh, that's stupider.
Yeah.
I encountered him near the end of the game, and I was like, oh, it's Kandar. There he is. I remember I stared at him for a long time, and I was like, Kandar. And I had to remember. Yep. As far as first encounters, I had been wanting to play Dragon Quest 3 because you had told me it was a job system game, and I like job system games. And I downloaded the Switch version. I downloaded the fan translation of the Super Nintendo version. I downloaded the GBC version, and I tried all of them. And then I went online and Googled to see which version was the best version. And then I started each version and couldn't decide which one I wanted to put my however many hours, a couple dozen hours into.
Yeah.
And then I finally was like, I guess I'll do the GBC version because it has monster animations.
It's true, yes.
And
so
the
does
Super
the Super NES version.
Does it?
Yes.
What was my issue with the Super? No, the Switch version doesn't have monster animations and is also butt ugly. But the Super Nintendo version, my issue was the translation.
It is a little bit... now, there's a newer translation that's actually pretty solid. I like the newest translation that is available.
It felt a little fan translation-y.
Well, it is. It is definitely a fan translation.
You could feel it. And that's why I went for the GBC version, is because it had the animations, and I liked that translation the most. And also, I'm not a hardcore enough Dragon Quest fan to notice or care that every spell is renamed into something stupider compared to its original version.
The spells are close to the NES names. I will give them credit for that. It is almost everything else that is a little different.
This was my other thing, is there's a Prima strategy guide for the GBC version.
That's true, yes.
And that was a big one for me, because I really liked what I've learned is I hate following guides that are like, walk 2 steps to the left, check this vase, walk 3 steps north, 2 steps east, check this cabinet.
Yeah.
And a lot of internet guides are that.
Yeah.
And playing a game like that sucks. And the Prima guide is pretty good about having a light touch and just being like, hey, here's a town, here's a couple problems and some leads you might follow, and then letting you kind of get to still experience the game.
I really want to take those guides that you don't like and narrate them with the Google Maps voice.
It gets to a thing where, like, I was looking at a section in the Prima guide, and I couldn't figure something out, and I was like, well, I'll go check Strategy Wiki and see if there's a walkthrough there. And I go there, and in the Prima guide, it's like half a page or like a couple paragraphs. And in the Strategy Wiki, it's like 2,000 word block of text for how to do it. And I'm like, oh my God, no wonder I'm not getting this. There's so much more to it. And as I'm reading it, it's like, now go 20 minutes out of your way to pick up this medicinal herb that's in a chest on the 3rd floor through the back entrance. And I'm like, well, I don't fucking want that. Like, can I get the version where you don't include all this shit? Anyway, I finally settled on the GBC version because liked the translation. It played well on my Mii U Mini because I didn't have the Mini Plus at the time, and the Prima guide was out. So that is the one that I played through for first encounters.
Yeah,
what about you, Saturn?
My first encounter would have been in 1992, so 31 years ago.
Oh my God.
So it was, we had just gotten a Blockbuster in town. We had our private video store for years, and that's the only place that we ever rented anything from. And at our local video store, NES games were, I think they were $1.25, or they might have been $1.50, but I think Super NES was $1.50. So NES, I think, was $1.25. And then Blockbuster opened up, and at Blockbuster, NES games were $3, and Super NES and Genesis games were $4.50, which was a lot. But they had different games at Blockbuster than our store had. And they happened to have Dragon Warrior 3, and it was a fairly new release. Like, I didn't know it was a fairly new release, but it was still at the time. And we were like, oh, we didn't even know there was a 3rd Dragon Warrior. We should check this out. And my mom was like, all right, well, we'll rent it one time because it's too expensive at Blockbuster for us to be renting things. But we'll try this one time. And then we rented it like 8 times in a row. Because every time we were about to have to turn it in, my mom was like, all right, I'm going to go up to Blockbuster and renew this because I'm getting pretty far.
Yeah.
And she got more hooked on it than I did at first. And then, like, I would watch her play and kind of help her, and we would, like, map out dungeons and shit. And when the big plot twist came, I was like, oh, this is really, now I want to play this too. She was like, you can't, we have to return it now. And she was upset that we had to return it, and it was getting to be close to Christmas at this point. It was at the end of the year, and my dad was like, well, at this point we've spent like almost $30 renting this game. Why don't we just buy it? And my mom was like, well, if you insist, you can make it my Christmas present. And so my dad got me in the car, and we went to Funko Land because Walmart didn't have it. So we had to drive to another city to go to Funko Land. And my dad's like, I want this dragon game. And I was like, it's Dragon Warrior 3. We need Dragon Warrior 3. And the guy there was like, oh, we just got Dragon Warrior 4. and so we came home with both 3 and 4.
I thought it was going to be like, we don't have that, but we have Draken on Super Nintendo. It's basically the same.
No.
Same idea.
Good Lord, no. I had rented that already by that point. It was not. So I came home with Dragon Warrior 3 and 4, and we had the top loader NES, and we still had one other NES that was in the living room for when we were playing Bomberman or something. And so my mom took Dragon Warrior 4 because it was the new one. She wanted to try it first, and she was already mostly at the end of 3 anyway. So and she was going to have to start over because batteries. So I got to play Dragon Warrior 3 while she was playing 4, and then we traded. And it was like the next 6 months of my life was just Dragon Quest.
Let me ask you, I don't know how you would have figured some of the things in this game out without a guide.
Just bashing your head into it over and over again.
I mean, this is a big experience to figure out through brute force, because there's some really tricky stuff, especially in the second half of the game, where it's like you kind of just got to know to go there.
Because so there wasn't the internet wasn't really a thing yet, so that wasn't really an option. And I don't recall any of the magazines having like any in-depth stuff on Dragon Warrior 3 or 4, just because they were such late NES games that they had moved on to 16-bit consoles. Yeah. So for the most part, we just kind of bashed our head against it, talked to everybody in every town over and over and over again until finally things clicked and we went and tried a thing, and we did end up getting through both of them. So it's just I like playing through it with the guides.
Some of the stuff I'm like, man, I would have never known to go to this secret spot, check the ground in this one area. And every now and then, they'll send you a direction and then have like a fake out spot that looks like where it should be, but it's not. It's somewhere else.
So now I'm curious what those spots are so that I can tell you
it's
how
so
I
embedded.
It
It's so embedded in your brain.
Yeah.
One was, it was in the second portion of the game. And I was looking for an item, and I had to search the tall grass near the corral.
In Cole. Oh, no, in to get the adamantium in Hawksness. Yeah.
Or as it was known in my game, it wasn't called
Dondora.
adamantium. It was called like auric or something.
Right, yeah. Orichalcum. Sorry, yeah.
And so they have this spot that looks like where it's going to be, and I spent so much time there looking for it, could not find it.
So first of all, the Game Boy and Super NES versions, when they enhanced the graphics, made some of those things less obvious than they were on NES.
Oh, I see.
Some of those things that you have to search for on NES is just obviously a different tile.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why I know.
Very interesting. A lot of it was like tiny metals were hard to find too, but they're supposed to be. That's kind of
those weren't in the NES
that's on purpose.
Version, so I didn't have to search for tiny metals.
Let's talk story, and we're basically just going to go through the entire story of the game.
Are we skipping development first?
No, we're not. Let's talk development. I'm sorry, I was scrolled down. Sarah, tell me about the development of Dragon Quest 3.
So much of the same team did return from the first two games. You had writer-director Yuji Horii, you had artist Akira Toriyama, composer Koichi Sugiyama, programmer Koichi Nakamura from Chunsoft, who had done the first two games, said he stepped back from being the primary programmer, though he did still contribute to the code. And the game's development took roughly a year, which was twice as long as the development of Dragon Quest II. But when you think about development today, especially with how big of a game this is, especially for the hardware that it was made on, developing it within a year seems crazy fast, but it was still twice as long as Dragon Quest II.
Now, having not played DQ2, 2 is one of the ones I haven't played. I think 2, 6, 10, I think those are the ones I haven't played. Okay. I think I've not played through all the other ones, but I've at least played a chunk of them.
Sure.
How, like, on the scale from Dragon Warrior 1 to Dragon Warrior 3, where does 2 land as far as, like, scope and size?
In the middle of 1 and 3. 2 is between 1 and 3, Justin.
Oh, I'm on... Fuck off. Because...
But no, it is pretty much in the middle. There was steps between them.
Because I mean, Dragon Warrior 1 is such a simple game.
Yes.
It's a very simple, very small game. Like, if you know what to do and where to go, it's also a pretty short game.
Well, I actually have some notes about everything that was new in 3 that wasn't in 2.
Oh,
so we will get to that a little bit later.
I was just curious generally, because in my head I'm like your rental story. Yeah. I could see you going into 3 being like, yeah, we'll rent it a couple times and it'll be enough, because for Dragon Warriors 1 and apparently 2, that would have been enough.
No, 2 was a little bit longer. It's not as long as 3, but it is significantly longer than 1. But more importantly, 2 is hard and mean. Yeah. 2 is the meanest Dragon Quest game. which is why Sega Master System fans should not be looking forward to it.
And then also,
it is cruel and it is hard and it is mean, which is what makes it feel so much longer than 1. Because it is longer than 1, but it's not that much. But it's just so hard that it'll still take you forever.
3 also does the very classic JRPG trope, but at the time, slightly less classic of, oh, you finished the game. Not. There's a whole other game.
And this was probably the first JRPG to do that, at least the first one I know of, that really codified that.
Yeah. Back to development.
The Western port of the game that we got over here on NES, it received an expanded animated introduction that shows Ortega fighting the King Hydra on the volcano,
which looks awesome on the Super Nintendo version.
Oh no, check out the NES version. It's pretty impressive for the NES.
Interesting. Okay,
especially for how graphically basic Dragon Quest games are on NES.
Right.
That introduction on the Western NES version actually looks pretty impressive. I can't believe they added that in just for the Western release where nobody would buy it. They also incorporated the save screen music from Dragon Quest IV, and they expanded the ending title theme to allow time for the localization credits. And they don't... Nobody has said whether or not this new expanded ending credit theme was actually composed by Sugiyama or if somebody else at Enix just kind of fudged his work together.
Yeah.
But it still sounds good. I actually prefer the Western version of it that is a little bit longer. Because it kind of ties in the Dragon Quest 1 theme with the Dragon Quest 3 ending, and it's nice. Also, the Japanese version of the game just has no title screen at all. It's just the text Dragon Quest 3 in the regular menu font on a black screen with no sound, and then you come to the load screen. Whereas the Western version actually has a full graphical picture of a dragon and shit.
I found myself humming a lot of the tunes from Dragon Quest 3 in double speed because I was playing most of the game on fast forward.
Yeah.
So this was such a long game that a lot of these tracks are embedded in my head.
Right.
In double speed. I didn't say this, and I do want to say this before we get into the story. The version of the game I played specifically, I played the GBC version. Mm-hmm. I did cheat twice, but it was just quick leveling cheats to reduce a little bit of the grind. But most of the grind I left intact. I just played it with fast forward because I wanted to kind of feel how much grind there was. Mm-hmm. I also used a ROM hacked version of the game that increased experience by 20% and decreased monster health and encounters by 20%.
And the Game Boy Color version already does those things from the NES version.
I can't even imagine how mean the NES version's got to feel.
Now, also, I would like to say that back in the day when I was playing this on NES, we had a Game Genie eventually. We didn't have one at first, but eventually we got one.
There's a lot of Game Genie cheats for this game.
I found a Game Genie code back then. I don't know how, because it wasn't in a magazine or anything that I can remember. But it's POZEOZ. I'll always remember it for some reason. Mm-hmm. And it just causes half of the enemies that you encounter to not be able to attack you. Mm-hmm. So they just stare at you while you beat them down. And they give you ludicrously more experience. That's the best code that I have found for any RPG, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk story.
Okay.
Do you want to go through it and I'll just commentate along the way?
Yeah, why not? So before the game starts, Ortega, who is the hero of Eliahan, which is the country you're from, he sets off to defeat the Archfiend Baramos, but he is defeated by the King Hydra on top of a volcano, which if you don't live in Japan, you got to see in a badass animation.
Yes, it was very cool on the Super Nintendo version. It was awesome.
Even the Game Boy Color version of it looks pretty cool.
I don't remember the Game Boy Color one now. I remember I did the Game Boy Color one, and then I played the Super Nintendo one, and I was like, this is awesome!
You kind of have to hold on the title screen for a while for it to play on NES and on Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
It won't just immediately play. You have to sit there for a minute.
Yeah.
So Ortega dies. On the morning of their 16th birthday, Ortega's child is tasked by the King of Eliahan to follow in their late father's footsteps and journey out to defeat the Archfiend Baramos.
Yeah, hey kid, go kill the most powerful creature we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Just bye.
Happy
Good
birthday. Good luck. Now, you'll notice that I was avoiding pronouns there because you can choose the gender of your hero. You can choose if they're going to be a man or a woman. And, well, I guess a boy or a girl because they're 16.
Yeah, which would be very exciting to my child who's playing the first Dragon Warrior and got actively upset when people call her sir. And so she's struggling with that, but she's 7. She's not ready for Dragon Warrior 3. It's too much.
Well, don't let her play the NES version because it does not care if you're male or female. It will still call you sir.
No, she's on the GBC ports.
Nice.
So that's what she'll be playing.
So the king gives you some cash and tells you to go recruit a team of adventurers at Patty's Party Planning Place, which...
Where?
In all the old versions, it's called Luida's Tavern or Ruida's Tavern. But in all the modern localized Dragon Quest games, they always call it Patty's Party Planning Place, ever since Dragon Quest IX, at least.
And this is effectively where you recruit your team, and you can go upstairs and you can make people.
Yes.
And then go recruit those people.
Exactly, yeah.
Although I thought I would be doing a lot more of this, and I did not. I basically recruited my party and then was like, bye-bye.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much what you do. You'll make your initial 3 people and 1 later for a mandatory side mission.
Yeah,
and that's it. Everybody else can fuck off. Usually, if I'm being lazy, I'll just grab the 3 people that are pre-generated. Yeah, because it pre-generates a soldier, a priest, and a mage. And
yeah, I took the pre-generated and just renamed them. And, that was.
It lets you rename them now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I renamed them. I don't think I recruited them.
Oh, nice.
I'm almost certain that I renamed it because I remember when I went to make Pablo, I had to make him a dealer.
Yep.
And, well, as the game knows him, it was P-B-L-O. Pablo. Because I did all of us, the whole cast, and all of our names are shortened, except Guy. I'm jealous that Guy's name fits into every JRPG name limit. Unfair.
If you're playing the first Lufia, you wouldn't even have to rename someone. There's already a Guy.
So yeah, I don't remember recruiting. I don't believe I did. It's possible I did.
Yeah,
but I don't remember doing it.
Now on most versions of the game, you're given some cash and you go and you recruit people, and they just have a stick and some clothes, and you have to outfit them with the cash that you're given. On the Western NES version, only on the Western version, all your characters come pre-equipped with the best gear they can get in the first town.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, and so there is a basically an exploit you can do where you just make a whole team of soldiers and you recruit them, and they all have leather armor and copper swords. So you just sell all that shit and then fire them and recruit another team, and you keep doing that till you have as much money as you want, which is a really nice way to start out the game. But it's cheating.
Yeah.
So. Like we mentioned, a lot of the areas that you mentioned are optional. They have their own side story. I'm not going to mention any of those. So
no, there's a lot of vignettes, a lot of little details,
right?
A lot of stuff that just goes nowhere, where someone just talks about someone in a different town that like traveled here or this or that, or a lot of people talking about Ortega came through here or
whatever. A lot of people talk about Ortega. There's one town that is completely optional, doesn't even have a vignette attached to it, where they talk about Ortega, but he was known by a different name there. He was like Papada or something. I don't remember exactly what his name was.
Yeah.
And in that town, in the NES version, and not in any other version for some reason, one of the characters gives you a water pistol that they used to spray at Ortega with. And you can use it on any NPC in any town, and all they'll do is say, don't squirt me. And that's it. That's the entire objective of this item. And they removed it from the Super NES version on in every other version. I'll never know why it was removed. It was stupid, but I loved it.
Weird.
But that town doesn't even have a story. It's just a place you can stop. There's nothing you need to get there. So it's just, just fleshing out the world. But the important stuff. No, go ahead.
The second half in particular of the game has a lot of... You don't even really need to go to the vast majority of that world.
True. Yeah. And that's and I think it's really most of that world is just there for nostalgia.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, so the important part of the game is
Orbs.
that eventually you discover that in order to get to Baramosa's castle, you have to collect these 6 orbs and wake up the godbird Ramia, who is sometimes Imperia and sometimes Ramia and sometimes Lamia. Anyway, so you get your 6 orbs. The red orb is found in the basement of a pirate's den, which you get by sneaking in during the day. The purple orb you get from Himiko in Japan.
Which is the name of the town.
Yep. The proper translation of it would be Zapangu. Which I don't know if that's better or not.
I don't know either.
Even in Dragon Quest XI, they called the town Japang again.
Yep.
So, whatever.
And it is the Japanese themed town.
Yes.
For people that haven't caught on to
very Japanese
the name.
themed. Yeah. Then you got your blue orb, which you get from Gaia's Navel, which you get from a trial in Lanson. There's the green orb, which is given to you by a ghost in Tadanki, which the modern translation calls Thedon, which I don't like that name because Tadanki is fun to say.
What I find interesting is several of these orbs, and the other two you're about to get to, you don't, like in my head, I have to get 6 orbs, and I'm like, all right, there's going to be 6 dungeons in 6 areas that I go through. And that's very much not the cadence of the game. It's very like the orb you get from the ghost, you just got to go find the final key, and then you can just go take it. And he's like, there's an orb. And you're like, you just had this just with you?
Well, the one in the Pirate's Den, you just like walk in there. There's no dungeon.
Walk up there and grab it.
And the Pirate's Den is right on the coast, too. So you can just park your boat there, walk over, get it, and leave.
What I like about it is the variety, because immediately I'm in my head, I'm in like RPG or Zelda mode or whatever. It's like, all right, there's going to be 6 palaces I go to and get 6 orbs and blah, blah, blah. No, the game very much is like, here's the 6 orbs that you're going to get in mostly dramatically different ways. Very few of them are just go straight to a dungeon, fight a thing, and then leave.
Right. It's more about exploring the world than it is about exploring 6 dungeons.
Yes. I'll let you do the final two.
So yellow orb you get from your merchant in the immigrant town, which is a neat mechanic in the game that I thought was really cool back in the day. They have reused it in some of the other games in the series since then. And every time they reuse it, I find it slightly more tedious. Anyway, then there's the silver orb, which you get in the Necrogond Shrine after traveling the Maw of the Necrogond, which is probably the hardest dungeon in the game.
Yes, that one sucks. That's the one where you have to throw the sword in the volcano?
Correct.
Yeah, that one sucks. That's
getting the sword
spot sucks.
Getting the sword is a pain. Getting to the volcano to throw it in there is a pain, and then the cave is a big pain. And then you just, once you get to the other end, there's just a shrine, and the guy's like, here's your orb, goodbye.
Now, along the way, you've run into the temple in Dharma, where you've been changing jobs, you've been leveling up, and we'll talk about all the systems in the next episode.
And I mean, technically, before you even go to the orbs, you have to get a ship, and to get a ship, you have to get pepper for a king. And so there's a lot of little things that you have to do along the way. But they are all those very area specific vignettes that you're doing.
Right. So eventually you awaken the bird.
Yeah.
And you go to the castle and you fight Baramos, the big bad guy. Yeah. And at this point, this is up to this point is where I spend most of my time in the game is the before. Because this is very much feeling like I didn't know there was a second half of the game.
Oh.
I had no idea.
At this point, you've basically hit the 2/3 mark roughly. But the game very much builds it up as if you were at the end.
Yeah, and it treats it like the end. And you get to the end, you fight the guy, and it even, after you fight the guy, they're like, you did it. And you're like, all right, credit crawl. And it's like, nope, go back to the town. Or it teleports you back to the town you started in.
Yep.
And there's like a big celebration, and you're like, all right, this is kind of weird, cool. So you go talk to the king.
On the NES version, you have to manually teleport back to the town or take your bird. Yeah. And when you go to the teleport menu, it blocks out everything except for the first town. So it makes sure that you know that is where you are going. Yeah.
You go talk to the king, and they're like, great job. And they do this little celebration. And you're like, all right, now the credit roll.
Yeah.
Nope. No.
Yeah. So while like the trumpets are playing and everybody's excited, even starts playing some victory music, if it's faking you out, thinking you're about to go into the credits, and then suddenly the whole screen starts shaking and a voice interrupts you to say that Baramos was just their pawn and that they are the real archfiend and they are Zoma and they are awaiting you at the pit of Gaiaga.
So then we meet Zoma, and what I love about this is that the whole castle is shook. Everyone's in there at this party, but nobody else in the world seems to be aware that Zoma has appeared and that this has happened.
Yeah, no one outside of the throne room is aware of Zoma. Everybody else thinks the world is at peace and you are a hero.
Even when the pit of Gaiaga opens up and a dude fucking falls into it.
Yeah.
Nobody seems aware.
Well, the guy who fell into it.
Right, he knows. You find him, and he's like, this sucks.
And the other guy that saw it happen, he also is aware.
He knows, but he's just laying there doing nothing.
Yeah, he's just dying, so, who cares about him?
And so this was... I had no idea about any of this. The pit opens, and you have to go fight Zoma, so you jump down into this pit, and it is Alfgard.
Yeah.
It's the world from the first game.
And it plays the music for the overworld from the first game.
Except in this game, it is the world of darkness.
Right. And man, this hit me in nostalgia so hard when I first played this. Like, it blew my fucking mind to see that, one, there was a whole additional overworld on an NES game.
Oh, yeah.
And that it was one from another game. Like, they had just grabbed this whole other game and crammed it into this game.
And I further didn't know that this is... Like, I knew that you told me this takes place before the other Dragon Quest games.
Right.
But I had forgotten exactly where it lands. And then you start to realize that, this is the immediate prequel to Dragon Warrior 1, the first game.
Well, not immediate. There's a couple hundred years.
But there's not a game between them.
Right.
There's this is the one before. This is the one that sets up the first Dragon Quest game.
Yeah. Because the first 3 games are a trilogy. Yeah. And they have a contiguous story. None of the other games in the series have a contiguous story.
Right.
It's just those 3. And this is the one that sets up the first 2.
Yeah. So let's talk about Alfgard and what you're doing in Alfgard.
Yeah. So you've arrived in Alfgard. The world is in eternal night. They have had no sunlight in however long since Zoma took over. And they have asked you to defeat Zoma. And what I always find interesting is that the landmass, despite being Alfgard, is slightly different. Like, some bridges haven't been built yet, and some areas are connected in different ways. So you can't just take the paths that you know from Dragon Quest 1. You have to learn these new paths to get to areas. And like the town of Hoxness or Damdara is still a town. It's not just this desolate graveyard, essentially.
Yeah. I like that they give you a ship immediately, which really speeds along the last half of the game. But I love that you show up and you're at this guy's house and he's like, this is the world of darkness. Don't you forget it. And he's real mean to you. And then his kid is like, Papa said you could take the boat. And you just steal his ship and never return it. Like,
right.
Why would he say that? He was just so mean to me. I think that kid lied.
Yeah, and also he lives on an island off the coast of Tantagel by himself with his kid. Like, that's his entire world.
He can never leave.
It's him, his kid, and that dead soldier that fell from the upper world.
Oh, man.
So
anyway.
So, you do need to return to the first world, which you can. You can just teleport back at any time. You can use a Chimera Wing, or you can use your Zoom spell. And you have to go find the Dragon Queen.
I think you mean the return spell, Saturn?
Yes.
What it was for me?
Yeah, or for any NES players. So you have to find the Dragon Queen. She has a castle in the middle of some mountains, in the middle of a forest. So you have to take the bird to get there. And you can't use the bird in the World of Darkness. You can only use it in the first world. So you fly over to the Dragon Queen's castle, and she gives you the Sphere of Light, which she says is necessary to stop Zoma, which, if you remember the first game, the whole objective was to get back the Sphere of Light that had been stolen by the Dragon Lord. So it's more continuity. So you head to the Underworld, you obtain the goddess Rubus's blessing, you create the Rainbow Drop, just like in the first game, and you storm Zoma's castle. But in Zoma's castle, you find Ortega. And he is alive. And he is still fighting the King Hydra for years, I guess.
Now, I don't remember encountering Ortega.
You have to. You pass him. He's this dude fighting a dragon in the middle of the last castle.
I didn't realize it was him.
Oh, yeah. And the greatest part is, so you get there, you watch him die to the King Hydra, and then you talk to him on the ground, and he's like, if you make your way to Eliahan, tell my wife and child that I died. And one, how would you know that we know what Eliahan is? We're in another world.
Yeah.
And two, way to not recognize your kid, asshole.
I don't know how I didn't realize that was Ortega, because I kept waiting to run into Ortega. Because when you hit the World of Darkness, they talk about him in a much more active tone.
Yes.
And so you're like, all right, he's here somewhere. And then I guess I went through the last area and was like, yeah, it was a fucking dude that died, I guess. That's weird.
I want to know how he got to the castle, because we made the fucking bridge.
That's true. How did he get to the castle?
Did he swim?
Maybe the bird used to go down there. Now it doesn't anymore.
Well, he never had the bird.
Oh, yeah, I guess he didn't. Maybe it's where he landed when he jumped in the volcano.
Maybe that's why it's taken him so many years to get back to King Hydra, because he had to swim to the castle.
And he doesn't want to do it again. He's like, fuck that.
So, it also, so they give Ortega this really neat sprite when he's fighting the King Hydra in battle, except for in the Japanese Famicom version, where it just uses Kandar's sprite, but blue. Because your father is a fat henchman.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Anyway, so the party confronts Zoma. You beat him. Light is restored. The sky seals up, and you're stuck in Alfgard forever.
Yep.
And you return to Tantegel Castle, where the king proclaims that you are now the hero of the land, and he grants you the title of Erdrick. And then you get a screen that says that the story will continue in Dragon Quest 1 and 2.
I got the title of Loto, so...
Right, yeah. The Game Boy version can't fit Edric on the screen. That's too many letters.
It's cool. It's really cool. It sets up the first game. If you played the first game... what I like about this is it can go both ways. If you've not played the first game, this is a great setup for it, even though it's a less complex game. But it gets you invested in what is otherwise a game that is so simple that it's kind of hard to get invested in it. But also, it is revealing to people who have played these games so far that Erdrick is a title, not the dude's name, right? Because I don't think there was any indication of that before this game.
No.
And in fact, it might not have even been the case, and they just said, how about we make it a title so we can change their name at the end, and then it'll all fit.
And also, when they announced the hero from Dragon Quest for Smash Brothers a few years ago, and they were showing all the different designs that he can have, and one of them is the Dragon Quest 3 hero. It's Erdrick. They didn't call him Erdrick. They just called him Dragon Quest 3 hero, and then when they were giving them all names, they named the Dragon Quest 4 hero based on his name from the manga. They called the Dragon Quest 8 hero 8. They called the Dragon Quest 11 hero, I think they just called him Hero or 11, and then for Dragon Quest 3 they called him Arasu. And I have no idea where the fuck that name came from.
Weird. Why wouldn't you call the Dragon Quest 11 one Luminary? That's the...
Oh, maybe that's what they called him. I think they might have called him Luminary. But my guess is that's just what Sakurai called him in his playthrough of Dragon Quest 3, and he just tried to make it canon now.
Yeah. This is... It's so cool. The story's really cool. It wraps up really cool. It's got some cool twists. It's. I don't know how the fuck I didn't realize that was Ortega until the show now. I don't know how. I honestly don't even remember that segment at all.
They should look it up on the YouTubes.
I'm gonna have to. I don't know how I missed it. What the fuck, man? Maybe I wasn't looking at my Miu when it happened, but I don't know.
So it's in the final dungeon. You come up to a bridge.
Yeah.
And your party is like, there's someone over there. And then it enters a battle mode, but you can't control it. It's just a dude and the King Hydra both on the screen, and they're exchanging blows with each other until the dude dies. And then it comes out of the battle, and you walk up to the dead guy, and he's like, I gotta find my kid. I
literally don't remember that.
Yeah, that all happens.
Interesting. And you're sure it happens in the GBC version?
It happens in every version of the game.
I don't know how I don't remember that. Or if I saw it, I didn't realize it was Ortega. I don't know. You said that, and I was like, you do? So, dumb on my part, I guess. Anyway, it's a really cool lead up into Dragon Warrior 1. I would say, honestly, if you've been wanting to go through the first Dragon Quest game and you've been kind of not really able to engage with it because you just don't give a shit, then play this one. And I think it might energize you and get you excited enough to go through the first one and maybe the second one with some ROM hacks. But that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to cap it off here and pick it up next week for the gameplay and legacy and port differences and all that kind of fun stuff.
All that boring gameplay stuff that gets in the way of the story.
Yeah. And if you like other boring stuff, we have Patreon. It's at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where you can listen to our boring show Talking Wizards or our boring show Read Along and just have a awesome, boring time. And we won't read your name because I won't realize there's an Excel glitch for months and months and months. And then we'll remember and we'll put it in there.
Yeah.
So that you can be excited with us about your Patreon name. We do want to thank the following patrons for their kind donations, starting with a big fan of mayonnaise and Japanese SNES buttons.
You're half right. Future Man, power washing Sephiroth since 1877.
I listened to the show on a hacked 3DS.
A winner is me.
Abe Lincoln.
Oh, man, I love that president. Alexander VG.
Atreyu Wormwood.
Bidet Thompson.
I don't know why that one got me. Blaster Keaton.
And Brian Kim.
Are all the fine patrons we want to thank for their very kind donations. Indeed. And for them putting up with us not reading their names for months and months and months.
For who knows how long.
Because Justin is scared of Excel and doesn't want to.
Look, there's numbers involved. He frightens easily.
It is upsetting. I type in a thing and it's like, do you want to do a formula? And I'm like, please stop. I'm scared. I had to ask my wife how to type words into Excel without it trying to do Excel things to it.
You put an apostrophe first.
Yeah, she told me that one. And then I learned it. Anyway, please tune in next week. I think we're gonna have Guy on the show. We're gonna do part 2 of this where we talk about all of the gameplay and stuff, and it'll be a good time. We're gonna talk about more Dragon Quest 3. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week, and as always, let us cling together.